Hi, welcome to Dinim number 7. We're back for the, what do we call this one? Eating meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Eating Meat mini-series, part 4 of 4. It ended up becoming a 4-part series. I do believe we're going to finish that series tonight. Next week, I have some ideas where I want to go. If I don't do it next week, I'll still tell you right now where my thoughts are for the near future. Shituf, what level of idolatry is allowed for a Nakum? Because there are some levels allowed. Learning Torah, how the difference between a Ger learning Torah and Akum learning Torah. I just saw another one I wanted to do. I think it was what was it going to be? What was it going to be? I lost it. I forget what it was. Somebody brought it up. I don't quite remember. I was thinking like Ger in the holidays, but how does that work with the Akum? So I'm not sure. But anyways, the first two I said are possibilities in the near future, unless something more important comes. But so far, we've really stuck to the program. We're revealing Nachri Goy Akum Noahide Halacha, and we're showing that it only exists because of Ger Torah. And Ger Torah, by definition, is neutral. It's not attempting to make Ger. It's just showing Ger as part of Torah, the non-Jewish Torah, and you cannot even have Noahide law without Ger. It's as simple as that. We left off last week. I guess my question, James, was what did we prove last week? We proved the principle that everything a Jew can do, a non-Jew can do as well. So to give a quick run through of the 4 classes of this mini-series, we started with what is eating the limb of a living animal. Then we verified all that information. Then we investigated that which made that learning possible. This principle of that which is allowable to a Jew is allowed for a non-Jew. We ended that based on a premise of Tosfos, and then which again needed validated, and that's what we're coming to do now. All right. And I had said at the end of the last recording that there were classic commentaries on the pertinent Tosfos on 56a of Sanhedrin, or no, 59a, sorry. 59a of Sanhedrin. And the theme through all 4 has been what is eating the limb of a living animal? Is it the blood or the meat? So the first class we said, Kamash Milan, a Chiddush. James wants to know what is a Chiddush. A Chiddush is what is called a Chiddush Gadol. A very big novel angle. So there are 2 schools of thought. One school looks for and likes the big Chiddush. The second school says there's no precedent for a big Chiddush. We like to keep it as close to our chest as possible. So, for example, when you see conspiracy theorists on Facebook, they are attempting to show a Chiddush Gadol. If I said Neil Armstrong never walked on the moon, that would be a Chiddush Gadol, correct? It says that the government fooled us, and there's scandal and all kind of corruption. But if we say, of course Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, despite possibilities that he didn't, what we're saying is the government doesn't fool you that big. So too in Torah, you can have a Chiddush Gadol and the opposite of a Chiddush Gadol. We brought a Chiddush Gadol which means big chiddush. That Ger Torah says non-Jews can eat the limb of a living animal as prescribed through Jewish allowance in the allowable way. And the skeptic would say, that's a big chiddush, and I don't necessarily prescribe to big chidushim. Therefore, I'll say, I don't know. And that's why the Ger movement has a lot of slow inertia, because it is a big chiddush, one that I believe I've shown through more than enough sources and examples. And I am from the school of thought that there is such a thing as a big chiddush. And the skeptic says, I don't know about big chiddush. So therefore, I just simply say, I don't know. To get past I don't know requires a big chiddush. And if you've put the work in and you can connect the dots to show a big chiddush, then by all means. Some can say Christianity came from a big chiddush. And then they say, since we seem to get burned by big chidushim, then it's best if we avoid big chidushim. Then you must say Kabbalah is wrong, Zohar is a forgery. Just basically any chiddush in Judaism you reject for the sake of rejecting it to say, I don't know. And I would say that is the biggest enemy Ger have, are those three words, I don't know. Because if you look at the way Torah works, I believe, and I would say I know, that you can know. And not just me, you, everybody, put the work in, learn the sources, you will see and know that there is such thing as Ger, the way that I'm teaching it. And even though it is a big chiddush, it's only a big chiddush because proverbial you never learned it before. A baby who only knows how to crawl and then discovers that he can run, that is a big chiddush. So the open-minded Jew, or the Torah mind, is full embracing the big chiddush idea. I would say that Christianity was not a big chiddush. I would say it was a big blunder, just a big deception. There's a big difference between a big deception and a big chiddush. There's no deception with Ger. The deception is that we thought it was converts, so we didn't bother to look at it, didn't even know what Ger was, how big it was, that it's all through the Torah. How could you know if you didn't know? But if you can know, you don't have the luxury to keep saying, I don't know. They say that in this era, ignorance is a choice. Well, if you go to Wikipedia and click on any file there on Wikipedia, I guarantee you will get a big chiddush. Because there's more information. It's also bad learning if you get the wrong thing. But let's even say you research off of the Wikipedia page and you verify. I will guarantee you 100% you are ready to get a big chiddush. If you come back and say, well, Rabbi Katz, I looked on Wikipedia, I researched something very interesting, there was no big chiddush, then I will say you were in moron man mode and you did not pay attention, you didn't look things up, you assumed you already knew it, which goes against the concept of looking up things that you don't already know. So if you're going to do the experiment, do not go to Wikipedia and look up something that you already know, trying to claim a big chiddush. It's impossible. You're already stating that you know everything, so you're not complying by the game rules. The idea of Ger and the big chiddush is to look into Torah matters of things that you don't know and that most people never learned, simply because they just didn't. I have not looked up the statistics of how many teams in the NBA have a high track record of stealing the ball on their home court through the month of May. I never looked it up. I bet 99% of basketball fans never looked it up. And I guarantee you, if you look that up and you really think about it, as random as it is, you will get a Chiddush. I promise you. I promise you. You might have to do some research, but you will find a Chiddush. A correlation, right? The team with the most steals also was the team with the highest scoring percentage. Okay, it's a big Chiddush. What does steals have to do with scoring points? I don't know. But it's a big Chiddush. And it makes no sense to deny a big Chiddush. All you'll be doing is saying, I don't know. Based on what? Progression is part of wisdom. So again, Torah Judaism is really split into those two camps. And we had a big Chiddush, pretty much this mini-series, and there is ample proof and sources to research and look up to come back just with more background of the big Chiddush. So let's go. My notes are atrocious, so I don't even know if I can read them. Man, I wrote all over the place here. Made sense when I wrote it down. Partly as I want to give it over my own way. I'm gonna, man, I don't know if I should stick to where we were last week or where I want to go. You know what? I better be disciplined because I want to get a flow. So let's pick up where we were last week, okay? We last left our superheroes with Tosfos, stating that the lamb of a living animal, that as we were taking it with the blood and the meat, was best articulated in Tosfos. Meaning we built the case that blood is part of the game. We elevated it. We theorized it, going backwards. And then we had to really nail down the entire discussion by learning the Tosfos, because we theorized from the concept. Tosfos is like the authoritative stamp. If you can say what you said the last 3 weeks in the words of Tosfos, that means you got it. Now, I looked up 2 other commentators here, aside from Tosfos. And they are Rabbeinu Peretz and the Tosfos Harash. And in Talmudics, the Rabbeinu Peretz and Tosfos Harash are the most famous commentators on Tosfos. Tosfos is an advanced commentary to the Gemara. The Gemara is advanced commentary to the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the writing of the oral law. So that you might know it as the Talmud, which is a book, many books, which contain the Mishnah and the Gemara in tandem. That's the big, thick pillar in the middle of Aramaic words using Hebrew characters. And then the real tiny print along the sides, on the side of the page that is closest to the binding of the book, is where Rashi's commentary goes. And the opposite side is the Tosfos commentary, which is usually a more three-dimensional model than the Rashi, until you understand Rashi, and then you realize that Rashi is also three-dimensional. And so then in the compilation works, there's works from the Rishonim and the Achronim. Rashi is what's called a Rishon, the medieval rabbis. Rambam is a Rishon. Ramban is a Rishon. And there's a lot of Rishonim. And they wrote on a commentary on the Gemara, basically the Talmud. And then there's Achronim. The Rishonim go from the year 1000 to 1500, give or take. Achronim, which means the last ones after the Rishonim, which means the first ones, is from the year 1500-ish to basically the last generation. everyone pretty much agrees that Rabbi David Katz is not an Achron. And neither is your rabbi. Whoever your rabbi is, he is no longer an Achron. That era ended with people like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Baba Sali, Rav Moshe Feinstein, right? The men of the 80s and 90s. If your rabbi thinks he's on that level, I suggest you find a new rabbi, because there's a clear drop-off. That's how you distinguish the generations. Rabbi Akiva is not the same as one of the Talmudic sages of the Gemara, meaning the Tanaim, the Mishnaic rabbis, are different than the Amoraim, the Talmudic rabbis. The Amoraim are on a lower level than the Rishonim, meaning the sages of the Talmud are called Chazal, definitive authoritative rabbis. Rashi is not authoritative, meaning he is not an author of the oral Torah. But his commentary is on the oral Torah, so he becomes a part of the oral Torah by commenting on the oral Torah. The Achronim, like the Vilna Gaon, becomes an oral Torah authority. He's an authority. Whatever he says on the oral Torah is an authoritative view. I am not an authoritative view on the Talmud. My opinion, this is my opinion, is that today's rabbis are authoritative scholars, almost like a historian. Our job now is to not write Torah. Torah has already been written. Our job is to learn it, whether it's the Achronim, Vilna Gaon, Rishonim, Rashi, or the Chazal. Our job is to learn their words, to learn how to learn their words, teach their words, give it over, and to present the Torah clearly as it is. I think the mistake of today is thinking that we are rabbis like that, and thereby rendering conclusions on the Torah and essentially creating a new religion. Meaning, if I am adamant that Ger is convert, which has no precedent in Torah history as an exclusion to the greater world of Ger, then it is my opinion that is wrong, it is harmful, yada yada. Do I believe that Ger is one type of, or Ger is one type, convert is one type of Ger? Yes, I do. Is convert the only type of Ger? No, it isn't. I teach Ger mainly to non-Jews simply because if one wishes to convert, there are known and accepted conversion programs for a potential convert. David Katz does not need to become the 20 millionth convert rabbi. There are a lot of non-Jews that are looking to claim their rights to learn and observe as Ger, and they currently have no Rabbanim counseling them in the most authentic way possible. By Hashgacha Pratis, it came out, that is my job, because that's just how things ended up. So I hope that makes that a little bit more clear. Do I say that convert Torah is wrong? No. I just make a point, don't forget about Ger, non-Jew, non-convert. And you'll say, but you talk a lot about Ger. And I will say, well, in all honesty, Ger non-Jew is 1A in the Ger world. There's more precedent on every level except for the Jewish religion to focus on Ger non-Jew. The Jewish religion post-World War II has settled on Ger convert, and that's their prerogative. But in a historical Torah perspective, the convert is 1B. And I'm not talking in terms of importance. I'm talking about in the majority of traditional Torah sources. Should there be no Ger today, then yeah, I probably would teach convert. But we are in a situation where there's an unprecedented amount of non-Jews in our world looking for Torah, and they qualify for Ger Torah, as this Dinim class is showing. So that explains that. Now that we understand a little bit more about Torah, the actual Torah and the intentions behind this, Tosfos is a very powerful commentary. Very powerful. It's actually a component of the oral Torah. Even though it's not part of Chazal, the function of Tosfos, I would go as far as to say, have you guys ever driven a car? Have any of you guys ever driven? One, two, one. Okay, so there's something called an automobile and the wisdom of driving, correct? Have you ever seen road signs on your roads? Road markings and road signs? Is that absolutely integral to the car itself? No, it isn't. But don't you think it's an incredible wisdom, street wisdom and sign wisdom? And it's pretty much just a package with driving today. I would liken the street signs to Tosfos and the Chazal to the car. You understand that? It's such a great wisdom that goes with the car, the street signs. Tosfos is very similar in its relationship to Chazal. Have you ever heard of baseball? You guys ever hear of baseball? It's a great game. Now, there's a wisdom to baseball, correct? There's a wisdom to baseball. Are you guys aware that there's a baseball bat as part of the baseball game? So there's companies that make baseball bats and baseball balls and baseball bases and baseball shoes and baseball mitts and baseball gloves and baseball cracker jacks and baseball seventh inning stretch songs, correct? Wouldn't you say that wisdom is absolutely essential to the game of baseball? As our Tosfos Chazal analogy has shown itself, it is. When a kid plays baseball and he dreams of being a major leaguer, he has in mind the kind of mitt he wants, the kind of bat he wants, right? So even though it's not actually the game itself, there's an aspect to it. You could almost call it, just like in Torah, there's holy wisdom and the 7 wisdoms of the world that are a part of Torah wisdom. Give me a 1 on that. All right. Now, Tosfos asks the question. You know what? I'm going to just stop reading my notes. I'm going to read you inside. Better to read it inside. You know what? I'm actually, even though I have my notes, I am going to read all this stuff inside because we'll just go over it better that way. Okay. Tosfos asks like this. Let's see here. James Rogers, do you have Sanhedrin 59A to post here?
Yes, I do have it. I'm working on it right now.
Okay.
Rabbi Hina Gamaliel said, they were also commanded not to partake of the blood drawn from a living animal.
Stop. Now, just so you know, Tosfos is going to comment exactly on that expression, okay? Just keep that in mind. Everybody keep that in mind. James, keep reading. Go slow.
Our rabbis taught, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat.
Now, that's from Parshas Noach. Is that correct?
Yes.
Notice the word how, what's he would say the word but.
Mm-hmm.
The word but, that's like in Hebrew it's ach. And that's like the trigger word, just grammatically. Keep reading.
This prohibits flesh cut from the living animal.
All right, now everyone, you have to get code to learn Talmud. This is very important that I'm telling you. You have to learn code. We are going to refer to several codes here. We're calling it the blood. Type 2 if you don't understand what I mean when I refer to the blood. And you don't have to be specific. Just know the general area I'm throwing our minds back to. Then I'm going to refer to the verse in Parshas Noach. Just call it the verse of Noach. All right, go ahead.
Rabbi Hanina B. Gamaliel, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, Rabbi Hanina B. Gamaliel said, it also prohibits blood drawn from a living animal.
Why?
What is this reason? He reads the verse thus, flesh with the life thereof shall ye not eat.
Stop.
Blood. Okay.
Yeah, stop. All right, so now, this is the position of that rabbi. And I'm speaking in general. All right, I know it's not specific. The goal in Torah is to embrace the fog, start general, just allow yourself to not know. We're going to spiral like a python and get it to constrict once we get in. Keep reading.
Blood with the life thereof shall ye not eat.
Right, keep going.
But the rabbis maintain that this reading teaches that flesh cut from live reptiles is permitted.
Stop. All right, I'm going to break protocol here and just explain as we go. All right, now pay attention to the code. Pay attention to the code. The verse in Parshas Noach, type 1, seems to be saying don't eat the blood. That would be if we took the Torah, what we call the pshat, or the emes, the real answer. Now remember, I teach Lafi Pshuto, and that's like the rabbinic approach to Torah. They call it Lafi Pshuto. That is a non-translatable word, Lafi Pshuto. It's just called Lafi Pshuto. It's just what it's called. Lafi Pshuto says like this. There's no such thing as eating the limb of a living animal when you eat a rat. Meaning you can eat a rat. Now, do we really want you eating a rat? No. So what does it mean? Remember, this is rabbinic reality. When you kill a cow and you eat a cow, you can separate the blood from the meat and have what we call a steak. Type 1. Can you eat a rat steak? Is it possible to go to a restaurant in Ratland and order a rat steak? Everyone should type 2. Now, you know why you cannot order a rat steak? Because you cannot separate the blood from the meat of a rat steak. We call that guts and goo and blood and bug juice. With a cow, it is a different thing. Now, I will explain it to you yet another way. How many of you have ever seen fish being cleaned? Is that not a beautiful thing to watch? There's a chachma of cleaning fish. And it's a perfect chachma. The way you slice and you fillet, fish is practically living food. You separate the meat, throw the bones away, you're done. There's no such thing as filleting a rat. There's no wisdom of filleting a rat that's on a human level, because the blood and the guts are intertwined. So when we say properly eat an animal, lest it be the limb of a living animal, what we're saying is don't swallow the fish alive, so to speak. Not the same with a rat. Because with the rat, there's no such thing as splitting the meat from the blood. Whereas in a kosher, what do you call that? Kosher cuisine, the process, whether Jewish or non-Jewish, is somewhat separating the meat from the blood. Type 1. So the rabbis learn in Parshas Noah, even the biblical level, it's about don't eat the blood. The rabbis are there to say Parshas Noah has nothing to do with eating the limb of a living animal or blood or meat. You say, how could that be? They say Adam was commanded in the commandments, type 1. We call that Vayitzav, and he was commanded. And he was commanded to not eat the limb of a living animal. And that's a tradition we have. Now, I don't know what that means, because I never read past Genesis, just like you, right? Type 1. You never read past that. So all I know is I cannot eat a living animal. That's all I know. And I'm smart enough to know that animals have meat and blood. Okay? I know that. I can guess. But I don't know the details. So in Parshas Noach, we're not learning eating the limb of a living animal. We're eating that you can eat rats. Because a rat is not included in the limb of a living animal, because of the blood-meat ratio. So now, in our Tosfos that James read, or the Gemara that the Tosfos represents, we're taking a sidestep here. We're not done. Keep everything I said on your mind. We're not done. The Torah seems to be saying, don't eat the limb of a living animal in Parshas Noah. Another way of saying it is blah, 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 meat, blah, blah, blah. And Rabbi Gamliel is saying blah, 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 meat. I say blah, 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 blood. Do you understand that? Do not leave out the blah, blah, blah. So now Tosfos says, I don't get it. Because I learned by Adam that that's where we have eat the limb of a living animal. I don't know what you guys want from me here. Can someone tell me what you want from me? Tosfos says, I'll tell you. We're allowed to eat rats. Okay. Which we can only eat certain kinds of cows. Keep going. Well, the cow cannot transgress Adam's commandment of eating the limb of a living animal, because that's where we learn eating the limb of a living animal. Okay? In the rat, we learned that its blood and its meat are really one thing. So when Rabbi Gamliel and the rabbis here said meat and blood, on one hand, I'm saying thanks, guys, because now I know I can eat a rat. But at the same time, you let me know what exactly is entailed, semi-pun intended, with the eating the limb of a living animal requirements, i.e. meat and blood, i.e. what are the factors in the prohibition of eating the limb of a living animal? Meat and blood. Retroactively, what is the problem in Adam's commandment of eating the limb of a living animal? Beware of the meat and the blood in their combination together. And I will explain that part as we continue. All we know is eating the limb of a living animal is about blood and meat, type 1. The rat has nothing to do with anything. It was simply the rabbinic take on Parshas Noach, because it is the opposite of what Parshas Noach was saying. Right? Parshas Noah said the meat in its blood, and we're saying that is not a rat. Anything like a rat is not what that verse is talking about. Separate issue altogether. But I only was motivated because you reminded me of blood and meat, which is what limb of a living animal is about. So it turns out we learned two things. We learn the rat, and we learn eating the limb of a living animal. Now let's read Tosfos. Af dam min achai, Rabban Gamliel says, even the blood. Now, the way you would read that is, the rabbis say that it's ripping the leg off a donkey, so to speak. Rabban Gamliel says, man, you know how strict the Torah is? You can't even eat the animal's blood. So there's a biblical level and a rabbinic level. The rabbis say the limb of a living animal. Rabban Gamliel says the blood. And Tosfos says, we only learn out from that verse the rat, not the blood, not the meat. And from the rat, we only knew the rat because of both rabbinic opinions, blood and meat. The reason why you should be confused right now is because there's multiple things going on at the same time. The blood and the meat serves the rat on a rabbinic level, and the blood and the meat serves the prohibition eating the limb of a living animal on the biblical level. So altogether, there are four dynamics at the very least at play here. That's called wisdom. You chop that. That's why learning Torah is not a linear thing. It's why learning Ger is very difficult. Because there's at least four things going on here at one time. James Rogers, are you good with that?
I'm adapting.
Good. Meaning you got to cover all bases before you can say, I got it.
Yeah.
Which means you have to do all the sources. You have to cover, really, you have to do all the preparation and then put it together. This is why, Rabbi Katz, tell me what Ger is. I cannot answer that question because you have not even began to research and put it together. You have to invest in putting it together before you get what it is. Otherwise, it'll never make sense. Because Tosfos is referring to a million things here. The Talmud was referring to a million things. Tosfos just brought it out into clarity. Okay. So now, I'm going to just step away for 1 second. Hold on. Okay, now we're going to check the other books that I told you about. This is Tosfos Rabbeinu Peretz on the rat. Tarti Shemai Minei Ba'aser Aver Min Achai Ma'ach Ba'aser B'Nashu Lo Tachlu L'Masher Shratzim Adam. We hear two things: the blood, the meat, and the rat. Into our came into a Shmina Mahai Kra Tarti Kamer Hacha. I mean, from Parshas Noah, we hear the two different things simultaneously. How does Tosfos see limb of a living animal with Adam when Adam was only commanded vegetation? It would seem to me that in the Sanhedrin, James 56. Let me tell you exactly. This is not Tosfos. This is just the accepted opinion that basically all seven Noahide laws. That's the thing. Sanhedrin says all 7 Noahide laws are rooted in Adam's command of that God commanded Adam. We call it in shorthand Vayitzav. And you would read that on the bottom of 56b, Sanhedrin, on your own time. Mm-hmm. And follow that as far as you need to go through basically 57b, just to be safe. And it explains how all 7 mitzvahs, even the limb, were commanded through Adam. And yes, I know that challenges the party line. That's why I'm against party lines. If you say, Kevan Ishmina Bahai Kra, Tarti Kamar Hacha, Im Ken Lael, the Kamartana, the Dorish Vayetsav, if you say we hear the essence of even the limb of a living animal from Noah's Pasuk, why? Because, why meaning, I don't get it. Why? We have Adam's verse, the Kamar Datana Dorish Vayetsav, Basar ben Nasho, Asar Mashiratzim, the Sorry Loimer, Velo La Asar Aver Minachai. One second. I wrote this down in my notes. It was a tricky way of reading. Let me read it myself real quick. Hold on. Intuar Kevin Oshina Mahai Kron, the Tati Kam Narahacha. Inkin La Ale, the Kamartan, the Tana, the Dorish Vayetsav. Basar ben Nasho, Asar Mashiratzim. That's right. Sorry, Loimer velo aser iver minachai. One second, this is very tricky. Velo and not to asur iver minachai. Yeah, okay. Vayitzav lamali. Tzav lamali. Vayitzav lamali. Iser iver minachai. Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you learn from Noah's verse, the blood and the meat, and you don't learn Aver Menachai, eating the limb of a living animal. Because you don't need it. Because you already know it from Noah's verse. So Adam's verse, why do you need it? Why do you need a specific, don't eat the limb? I already know Noah. Hashma'ina mikra the basar ben nafsho nami isra aver minachai tartish mami nadakadamaracha. So what's the answer? B'yesh laimar the vadai le'el the darish v'yatzav. We have Adam's verse in the end of the day. Kevan demine nafte isra aver minachai the ika kra lachal v'lachal v'asa hanikule. I'll tell you the other way. Just tell me Adam. Why do I need Noah? Therefore, Adam will teach me the limb. Noah will teach me the rat. You understand my code here? Type 1 or 2. Adam teaches me limbs. Noah teaches me rats. Avohacha lekalami boye kivan aksiv basar nashalo dachlo shmina nami israver minachai tardish pami nakami nahacha vayitzav lamali. But I don't need Adam. Just tell me Noah, and I'll tell you the whole story. So regleimer daha ikar iser miviyitzav nafik. So therefore, we go back to what we're saying. Adam teaches me the ikar of the limb. Meaning there's a thing called eating the limb of a living animal. Noah teaches me how I can eat rats, which is a nice way of saying be careful with blood and meat. Correct? Yes. Now when I learn Adam, what do I know? I know that there's this thing called eating the limb of a living animal, and it contains both the meat and the blood. Because Noah had nothing to do with eating the limb of a living animal. It only taught me I can eat rats, per force. 1 or 2. With me? Noah's verse was very ultra specific. It was only interested in teaching me a chiddush per force due to the reality of blood and meat. But now that you told me the reality of blood and meat, and I cannot pervert the eating of cows, but I can pervert the eating of rats. Go back to Adam, and he says, by the way, be careful in how you eat the cow. So what about rats? The idea with rats is you're allowed to eat a rat, but who'd want to? You see my point? It's just telling you that the rats are not included in the eating the limb of a living animal. Just per force. It's not the exclusive part of that law. But by revealing that rats are not inclusive of that, then you learn exactly what eating the limb of a living animal is. If this chat room has James, Justin, and David in it, and I say, Justin, you need to leave, then James and I found out we were the essence of the group. Correct? Type 1 or 2. There you go. Okay, now let's go ahead and do Rabbeinu Peretz or no, Tosas Rosh. Yeah, this is pretty cool. It's the same question, just different commentary. All right, we're talking about rats. Again, same thing. Mashma bin Rabbana bin Rabbi Chanina darshim min shtei drushes le'el ka'amar ahu mashrei dav shiratzim huda asif v'lo darish mine lo chada darasha. The yesh lomar the Tana design mitzvah zafal gad dabasar min achai miyitzav mekom mekom kevan etzorik lahat yerdam shiratzim hutzrech lechtu basar v'dam to be inyan acher lo mishtamalei. Because all we know that we can eat rats, we need the prohibition to come somewhere else. And that's Adam. Therefore, Therefore we learn 2 things from Noah. We learn rats, and we learn the essence of what Adam's law is: blood and meat, living animal. So in the end, again, we learn 2 things from Noah: the limb, which contains the blood, and rats. You cop that? There's 2 things we learn from Noah: the rat issue and blood and meat, as opposed to just meat or blood, but blood and meat. So we hear 2, blood and meat, and a bigger 2, blood and meat and the rat. Do you see how there's like a subgroup? The blood and meat are a miniature 2 that are really 1, and then it blows up to a bigger arena of 2 of the blood and the meat are 1 thing, and the rat is another thing. Do you follow that? 1 or 2? Now listen to this. This is interesting. So it ends up being the rabbis say, and I mean rabbinically, the rabbinic enactment, that Noah. Wait, let me back up. Let me back up. Rabbinically, we learn by Noah meat with blood. But more importantly, it's the meat because the rabbis learn in accordance with Adam. But biblically, remember, biblically is the biblical law, and rabbinic is the rabbinic law. The biblical law is blood. It's always blood. And I'm going to explain that in a second. Hold on. In my preparation, I forgot to write my notes on this book here. Let me read it. I prepared it, though. Avaldam. Okay, now this is yet another commentary on Tosfos. You see how it's all basically working Tosfos the same way? You see that? But little different angles and perspectives to gain a super conscious position. This is called locking it down. There's no more questions after learning it this way. You understand that? Last week we got it. We're not saying anything different, but this is solid ground. Avaldam minachai v'lo mizeh raya l'maskanas hartosfos le'el the dam eino beklal basar. So our Tosfos is like Rabbi Chanina, who wants to say blood and meat. And this commentator is saying, this is Aruch Lanier, he's an Achron. He's saying, this is not a proof. As Tosfos says, I think it's on 56b, if I'm not mistaken, that blood is not included in meat. Meaning there's two different views. The im lo kain, lama li kra. If it's not so, meaning if blood and meat are not together, then why do I have the verse on blood? Hari hu b'chlal aver u'basar minachai. I gotta go over this slowly. Hold on one second. This one took a long time for me to chop. 1 second. Avodam minachai lo. Umizeh re'iyah b'maskana hatosfos le'el. The dam eino b'chlal basar. The im lo kain. Lama likra al dam. Arihu b'chlal iver. Lama likra al dam. Harihu b'chlal iver ubasar minachai. Lama likra. All right, so lama likra because of that. So the dam in the dam. Dam eno b'chlal basar. Dam eno b'chlal basar. The im lo kain. The im lo kain. If it's not so, only kra. Hold on. This is a tough one. Hold on 1 second. I had it when I worked it out. I can work it out again. Yeah, I got it. Got it. Even Mechai. Yeah. Okay. He's saying, that there's something called Aver Menachai, the limb of a living animal, but not blood. And the reason why you know not blood is because you need to find from our Noah verse that blood is with meat. You got that? Noah's verse is specifically telling you blood comes with meat. If I only knew the limb, which is Adam's verse, I wouldn't know blood. Yeah, there's actually different things called. There's the limb. There's something called the limb of a living animal and the meat of a living animal. So you need the blood and meat verse. This is a deep one here. Hold on a second. The dam eno b'chlal basar, im lo kain, lama likra al dam. I got it. Whoa, that is good. Wow, I got it. Okay. Wow, this is incredible. Is blood and meat together in rats? Type yes. Type yes. Type yes. And we are excluding rats, correct? Yes. So therefore, is blood intrinsic with meat in cows? No. So therefore, what does Noah's verse come to tell me about blood with meat when I already learned that blood and meat are not intrinsic because we left out the rat? That in the prohibition of eating the limb of a living animal, blood and meat are in that prohibition. Is that tight or what? Did you guys cop that? Did you cop that?
Say it again.
We know from Noah the rat. Say yes. The rat, his blood and meat are one. Keep going with one on me. Therefore, in the cow, is the meat and the blood one? No, right. Now, is there a single prohibition called don't eat the limb of a living animal? Yes. And therefore, it doesn't include blood, correct? Because it's not a rat, correct? But we learn in Noah's verse, we don't learn only the rat, we learn from the rat that blood and meat are one issue in the concept of eating the limb of a living animal. So as the eating the limb of a living animal is concerned, do we take into account blood and meat? Yes. Is that hot wisdom or what? You cop this? James, you hear what I'm saying? You got on the microphone.
Yes, it's a whole new. This is new. This is not party line at all.
No, it is not. You hear the wisdom behind it? It's an amazing cop.
Yeah, it
because
works.
The rat, his blood and meat are one, correct?
Right.
Therefore, the cow cannot be one, correct?
Correct.
So when we say don't eat the limb of a living animal, the cow, that can only be the limb and not the blood, correct? Otherwise, it's a rat. The cow is different than the rat, correct?
Uh-huh.
Because the blood and the meat are separate. You follow?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So now, what does Noah's verse tell me? The rat, which we've been saying. But also, don't make the mistake that you can eat. That you can not eat a cow patty from a living cow, but I'll go ahead and eat the blood because all I said was the meat. I can eat the blood. The Torah tells you the biblical prohibition is on the blood. So in the umbrella of the prohibition of the cow, I cannot eat the meat or the blood. But as far as the cow is concerned, is the meat and the blood one thing? No, because it's not a rat. You follow?
Yes.
When you eat the rat, you're eating a bloody, meaty sandwich, no matter what. It's not called two things. It's called one thing. By the cow, it's called two things. But the prohibition of the cow, it's only one thing because the blood doesn't come under that prohibition because it can either be a this or a that, i.e. a cow or a rat. But once we say not the rat, we say the cow. I'll say, so I can only not eat the cow meat and I'll drink the blood. What does the Torah tell you? Rabbi Chanina, don't think that the blood is just as forbidden, if not more, than the meat. Cop that? You with me? Yeah. Now, We did that pretty good. So we got the Rabbeinu Peretz, Tosfos Arush, and I got 3 more things to tell you. Okay. Now, how do I want to say this? We'll save those 2 for later. Okay. This is an amazing thing I'm going to tell you here. There's something called Jewish slaughter. Remember this? The Jews are put to death, and non-Jews are killed in the Torah law, right? The Jew slaughters with a knife his animal, and the non-Jew puts his animal to death. When a Jew slaughters, the dam nefesh, the soul with the blood, squirt out of the neck, and that animal's now kosher. Type 1. When the non-Jew kills his animal in a humane way, prescribable, and I think the logic is that it should resemble the Jewish death to the animal, right? You don't want to throw it over a cliff or something, and you want to resemble the Jewish slaughter. And you want it to be the kind of death to the animal that you're gonna eat the animal. Animal cruelty is part of the 7 laws. When the Jewish slaughter happens, the soul goes out of the animal. Have you guys ever had a sneeze and you held the sneeze in? You ever done that before? Right, you hold your nose and you get a little, right? Okay, that's what happens when you kill an animal. When the Jew slaughters an animal, it's like, ha-choo! And the blood squirts out, the nefesh goes out. That entire, it's like a total sneeze where you say, that felt amazing. By the killing the animal, it's like holding the sneeze in till it passes through. You cannot eat your animal until that sneeze has totally happened. You follow that? That you have to be sure that the nefesh has leaked out. Once the nefesh is gone, the blood in that animal no longer contains the nefesh. Can you now eat the limb of a living animal and your dead animal once the nefesh is gone? Is there any... Right, so it's a mutter, it's an allowable animal. So there is something called meat and blood in your animal, correct? Is it the same as the rat? No. No. Because we know it is not a rat. The meat and the blood in your animal is no longer called meat and blood. You know what we call that? A sirloin. If the nefesh had not gone out of your animal and you attempted to eat it, you know what I call that? Eating the limb of a living animal on the rabbinic prohibition along with the biblical prohibition of eating the blood. Type 1. So it comes down to the Torah was given to Israel, and in that Torah they were given shechita, kosher slaughter, which is a nice way of saying, we are commanding you to kill with knives so that it's very clear what is permissible and what is prohibited. The non-Jew, which we learn from Ger Torah ultimately with the blood, puts his animal to death. And now, when the animal is at least dying, it becomes a svara question, a logical question. If we have an animal that may or may not be totally dead. The Torah asks the question, what do you call this animal? So we say, has the nefesh gone out? Has it not gone out? By the Jew, we know it went out. We slaughtered it. We slit its neck and it went out. By the non-Jew, we don't know. How do you know when the nefesh goes out? So you use logic to know. Then you say, what is inside this animal? Is it blood or is it meat? Well, on a biblical level, maybe it's just called blood. On a rabbinic level, it's called meat. Is it like a rat or is it not like a rat? I.e., for the akum, dinim, and mitzvot, we rely on the svara, the logic of the law. So what have we shown in our discussion? There's Jewish slaughter, which has ger elements, which bring us into the akum world. From the akum world, we are able to logically deduce from the Torah and commentaries what is the reality of eating the limb of a living animal from rabbinic level, biblical level, realistic level, and every level. Is that not an amazing realization? The entire essence of eating the limb of a living animal is the result of not being ger. How awesome is that? If you are ger, you are prohibited to eat blood, and that means dam nefesh, and that means din yisrael, and that means kosher slaughter. If you're not ger, then it's akum, and there's no dam nefesh, and it's not a slaughtered animal, it's a killed animal. And now by understanding the law, you can approach it with svara to understand by looking at the various dinim, what is the rationale behind the Noahide law, don't eat the limb of a living animal, which, as James Rogers has said, it is now no longer 100% non-party line. That's one issue. The second issue I want to say, so there's actually two issues. The third issue is there's the main source for this thinking is in various places in the Talmud. A non-Jew who learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. There's at least two consistent versions of that story. Nachri or Akum and Ger. I.e. an Akum who is doing Jewish law is like a Kohen Gadol, meaning he can eat the kosher steak. Or Ger, meaning it's a Ger thing. It comes out practically that if you learn Akum, you never quite get to Ger. If you learn Ger, you get Ger, you understand Israel, you understand Akum. In a more appropriate application, the Nachri that learns Torah, he's learning Torah to convert. So his Ger, when it says he becomes Ger, is convert. And the reason why he's called a Nachri is because until he converts, he's a Nachri. If he doesn't convert in the end, he remains Nachri, never changed from Nachri. If it's a Ger that learns Torah, he's not becoming a convert, he's not a Nachri, and since there's no conversion, he never will ever be a Nachri again. See the difference? Someone going for Ger leaves Nachri, will not become Jewish or convert, and he's already grandfathered into the Ger world. If he's converting, he's a Nachri until he converts. If he never converts, which is 80% of all potential converts, he remains a Nachri. He never left Nachri. He never tasted Ger. Pun intended. And now we're going to come with the last thing. The Tosfos about keeping Shabbos. Remember we said about if that's what is allowable for the Jew, is allowable for the Akum. And Tosfos addresses this because we have to address if it's allowable for a Jew, is it allowable for the Akum? So here we go. Tosfos. Then we're going to close with this. In a matter that's a mitzvah for Israel, lo amrinan. We don't say if it's a mitzvah for Israel, the Akum can do it too. Because it's a mitzvah. It's not an allowance. It's a mitzvah. Hachi oivet koikavim sheshabbos chayev Yisrael mitzvah. We're going to say that if the Akum does the mitzvah as a Jew does, he's guilty. Even the afal gav de b'sheni b'Shabbos. Even if you say, I didn't keep Shabbos on Shabbos, the non-Jew says, I did it on Tuesday or Monday. And you say, but it's not even a mitzvah for a Jew to keep it on Monday. So I didn't do something that was a mitzvah for a Jew. In any case, mitzvah shvisa Shabbos. The Jew has a commandment of Shabbos. The al ha'oivrim, those that transgress it, of the Akum are guilty, and the Jew, he is exempt. Even though he's exempt, it's not allowed. A Jew cannot keep Shabbos on Monday, even though I will not be punished as such. However, there's a challenge from this. The baby whose head popped out, we don't kill the mom for a half-born baby. But if the head popped out, we kill the mom because she's already dead. And we can break Shabbos to save, in this, the mother, before the baby came out. But the non-Jew, it's forbidden, since he was warned not to transgress. And there is to say that also that for an Israelite, it was a commandment to break Shabbos and save the baby or the mother. Meaning, since the Jew is commanded to break Shabbos for the mother, we still don't say that a non-Jew then can keep Shabbos. The parallel argument. But if we say that a Jew, it's now a mitzvah to break Shabbos for the mom. Not just that we are allowed to, but it's a mitzvah to. So we started off by saying the Jew has no mitzvah on Monday. Then we, to go against Shabbos. Then we said the Jew can break Shabbos to save. Then we said a Jew can be a mitzvah to break Shabbos for the mom. If shar da afilu oivid koichavim shari. Just like a Jew has a mitzvah to break Shabbos for the mom, the non-Jew who did not keep Shabbos on Monday, but rather went directly to keeping Shabbos, it's allowed. You follow the theory? If the non-Jew, we're looking at Shabbos on Monday, the Rambam brings that example. If the Jew can't do Shabbos on Monday, and the Jew's commanded in Shabbos, the non-Jew cannot keep Shabbos nor keep it on Monday. But if the Jew can break Shabbos as a mitzvah, to the one total opposite direction, then the non-Jew, if he goes right to the mitzvah, Krisis 9a, then it's allowed. He's allowed to. But if he's gonna, it's because he sidestepped the Tuesday thing. See, if he goes around with Tuesday, then he can never keep Shabbos because he can't even. He's already warned not to even rest on Tuesday. You follow? But if he goes right to the thing itself, then it says if sharda filu oivi koichim shari. So there's it. Remember we said for the non-Jew to eat the kosher steak, he has to find the path of wisdom of permissibility. For Shabbos and the non-Jew, he has to find the pathway of permissibility. Anything short, it's forbidden. And that's Tosfos. And that, I conclude, gentlemen, Dinim 7, the mini-series of 4, I think we've covered all bases. The biblical for Jewish is blood. The biblical for Noahide is blood. The rabbinic for Noahide is the meat. The rabbinic for the Jew is the meat. There's a path of permissibility for the Jew. The Akum can ride the path of permissibility of the Jew. Jewish law opens up non-Jewish law in contrast, i.e. killed, put to death versus killed. Ger is the light that shines in between all of these cases, like white parchment on around the black letters, the Torah scroll, so to speak. That Ger Torah is what allows us to maneuver. We said the word portal, like portals, in between the laws. So again, what did we see today? We saw, how do we say it? I said at one point that the blood. The commentator said, if I knew the rat, I would say the cow. And the cow is only the meat. And I would say I'm exempt from the blood. And therefore I can eat the blood. The Ger teaches us the biblical prohibition with a Jew not to eat the blood, which goes down into Noah's verse, which is the essence of eating the limb of a living animal for the Noahide, not because it was as it was commanded by Adam, but because Noah tells us the rat and the blood, two aspects as one, and it is Noah's law for the non-Jew of the blood, but mainly the rat. We learn the blood only from the rat, and the blood verse is backed up by the Ger verse of eating the blood, which is where all of this started. Thank you very much. Be well and live and prosper. Any questions or comments from you guys? James, any questions?
It's almost like when you learn Ger, or the Ger's place makes Israel that much more holy. You know what I mean? Like if the Ger is the skin of Israel, that just makes Israel that much more holy in comparison to the nations of the world. It's what I could be wrong.
If I'm hearing what you're saying too, it's that Ger Torah gives the nations the appreciation of the tremendous depth in the Torah law that was given to all mankind. Is that what you're saying?
A bit, yeah, but it separates Israel that much more. It's much more solidified. You know, there's
right.
It becomes harder. You know, like the egg at Passover, it becomes harder.
That's it. Because
more solid.
Now, kosher food is not just some kind of dietary health law. God gave. In my temple class, we realized that the shechting knife is the essence of spirituality in the angelic kingdom. So what God gave Israel is the infrastructure of a really sharp knife, which is the basis of the temple. Because then Israel has no excuse to kill animals. It puts them to death. Totally separate issue. So if Israel's putting animals to death, which makes a very clean and clear distinction of their law, then the non-Jew who kills its animals is a derivative and equally clear law, which then leaves us with the intangibles of the law, the meat and the blood and not the rat, which then is proven by the blood verse of Ger. And that's like the whole thing the Christians stole, because the blood, as the Christians stole, and the counter missionaries make sure to reveal, the blood is the atonement in the temple. So look what we have. If the temple is the most sacred, and the blood is the atonement, and the knife is what drives the temple, then our eating is also about the blood and the knife. We say a kitchen table is like the altar in the temple. And we're seeing that the Jewish lifestyle, as decreed by the Torah, is ultra holy. Mm-hmm. And the non-Jews, their law is to emulate Jewish law. Not for the sake of, oh, wow, you guys are so cool. If you don't emulate the law, then how do you know if your animal's dead? If you don't know your animal's dead, then you're going to be eating the limb of a living animal. So you have to resemble the intangibles of the Sphara. Make sure the nefesh is gone. You say, how do we do that without kosher slaughter? My answer, figure it out. It's called don't be cruel to animals. I guarantee you, if you're not being cruel, you will have achieved that outcome. So the Akum law is a direct derivative of Israel law. And the Ger Torah is like the third dimension that allows you to properly conceive what the issues are. Because without Ger, there's no blood. Without blood, you didn't chap tosfos, you didn't get the rat deal, and you're just going to be confused, which makes machlokis and suffix doubt, and then you're probably just going to be upset and be cruel to the animal and transgress the law. With Ger, get this, there's no excuse to be cruel to animals. Because you're going to care about the blood, which means you're going to care about the killing, which means you're going to do it right, and that makes it kosher, which basically elevates the world, and it gives the nations an appreciation for the temple, proper slaughter. And if that doesn't usher in Mashiach, I don't know what does. So we have a revelation of Dinim, eating the limb of the animal, probably not avodah zarah, probably not blaspheming. You're probably not going to want to murder. Emulation is not stealing. And you're not going to be lustful for adultery. I would go on record as saying mastering this will ultimately improve all 7 laws. To the point you won't transgress those 7 laws, which was Aaron Soloveitchik says that is the definition of Ger Toshav on the lowest level. Someone not transgressing the 7 is keeping the 7 by definition, and that is a Ger Toshav. And that then brings Din Ger Toshav, which brings mercy, which sweetens the judgments, elevates mankind, and I'll say properly ushers in the Messiah. Not bad in one day's work, huh?
I mean, not bad.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you again, Rabbi. It was awesome.
Thank you. And inside we saw what the kishkis that makes it work was the wisdom interchange from station to station. That's why wisdom is so important. All right, to go from Adam to Noah, from the rat to the cow, to put to death to slaughter. You see how wisdom is the interchange from step to step. You cannot learn this without wisdom. It's not linear. So there, you have to be able to spiral all the points, and you move from each station wisdom to wisdom. Then you come out of it with very practical, intangible, kind of like big ideas. Like the only slaughter was given to Israel, and the non-Jew, the difference is his animals are killed, not slaughtered. I mean, that's a massive statement. Massive statement. And it's entirely true. So what it does is it makes a tikkun. It gives very big, easy kind of like a technology to deal with these concepts, that you can move them with proper handles. That the blood is the biblical. The meat is the rabbinic. Adam's verse, Noah's verse, the cow and the rat. Blood versus meat. Ger versus akum. Those are called klalim. And each point in the klalim have an ikar. I mean, each thing is a function. And then when you conglomerate points, it becomes an inyan, a complex thing. Slaughter is an inyan. Eating is an inyan. Comparing the rat and the cow is an inyan. And the entire umbrella comes under eating the limb of a living animal, not party line, which comes from Dinim. Dinim is, you could say in short, is non-party line. That's what Dinim does. Gets rid of party line. We can now quote that. Mm-hmm. And again, the fabric that makes it happen, I'll close on this point, is Ger Torah. And Ger Torah is another way of saying wisdom. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.